Hello, everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express. This is our weekly interaction with experts where we analyze the impact of developments in our backyard, on our neighborhood, on India. Do click on the new Indian Express website and tweet and follow Global Express. Now, big power rivalry has almost always been a factor post the Cold War. In the Middle East, in Europe, it's always been the United States versus Soviet Russia. But as 2024 dawns, it's no longer just Vladimir Putin's Russia that is pushing back at the former Warsaw Pact countries, goaded into containing Russia by Washington and the EU. And of course, which led to the confrontation in Ukraine. There are new powers rising. China is one, actively encircling India, stepping in to fill the very large shoes that the US has left in Afghanistan. It's been the first country to recognize the Taliban regime. It's brokered a peace between the Saudis and the Iranians. And the Israel-Hamas war that Iran calls the Al-Aqsa Storm has thrown up other middle powers like Saudi Arabia and now Qatar. So on day 60 of the Hamas attack on the hapless, unsuspecting men, women, and children who lived in the Israeli settlements that line the Gaza Strip, there's no mistaking the long shadow that Iran casts over the region. Or the very real possibility that with the rise in attacks by the Houthis on ships in the Red Sea, of the US setting up a naval task force, and with very little movement now on freeing the hostages still being held by Hamas, a stepped up bombardment of Khan Yunis in Gaza, will 2024 see a deep divide? A new global conflagration, so to speak. Talking to us on Global Express this week is Israel's Consul General for South India, Ms. Tammy Ben-Haim. She's served in various positions in our country's missions, including Washington and Delhi, over the last 20 years of her career in the Foreign Service. Welcome, Ms. Ben-Haim.
Thank you very much.
We also have with us Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, a defense economist. He's a well-known face on TV and print and an author of some repute. Welcome, Mr. Iyer Mitra.
Thank you so much, Neena.
Let me begin with you, Ms. Ben-Haim. What can you tell us about the plight of the hostages taken from the kibbutz 60 days ago? I mean, the Mossad team, which was based in Doha during the backroom negotiations between Doha, the US, and and Egypt, and even Hamas, freed the first batch of hostages of the 250 hostages that had been taken. Now Qatar's Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani says he wants to restore the 7-day truce. He wants the Israeli Defense Forces to stop bombing Gaza. And the UN wants another ceasefire. Now, Israel has the northern part of Gaza under its control. It's moving ahead with the second stage, which is taking the south. Is the Israeli Defense Force any closer to achieving its goal, which is obliterating Hamas for one, and tracking down the rest of the hostages? Ms. Ben-Haim?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I know you know and Abhijit knows, but I need to just take a step back and I'll answer your question. Because as you rightly said, it's been 62 days since the unprovoked surprise terror attack by nearly 3,000 Hamas terrorists who entered Israel. So first I need to say the kibbutzim, the villages, the small towns are near the border, but they're inside Israel near the border. Israel left Gaza in 2005. Hamas, in a very militant, very brutal coup, took over the Gaza Strip from Fatah, or basically took it over to control in 2007. So we just have to be clear here of the issue. It wasn't a skirmish. It's not that there are Jewish settlements in Gaza that were attacked by terrorists. These terrorists went over the border into the fence by land, sea, air, and underground, and also by underground in tunnels. Again, unprovoked on a Saturday morning, which is our day of rest, went into Israel, into kibbutzim villages, and were there in a pre-planned, premeditated attack, and they killed, they brutalized, they raped, they burned, they maimed, they beheaded. entire families. Some families don't exist anymore in Israel because the whole family was killed before being raped, after being raped, brutalized. So we just need to get this very, very clear. And in addition,
I think the world stands with you on that, Ms. Ben-Haim. Everybody feels enormous sympathy for what happened to these people who were killed in their beds as they slept, many of them.
Yeah, I think, it's a little bit awful to say, but yeah, maybe being killed while sleeping, it's the ones who maybe came out of it, well. But the issue is, people don't remember, as you said, 62 days in the world is a long. So I just had to mention this. And in addition to the over 1,200 people they killed in this way, they kidnapped 238 people into Gaza. And these 238 people who were kidnapped include a 9-month-old baby who's now almost 11 months old. His name is Ariel, his brother who is 4, their mother Shiri, and their father Yarden. So this entire family was kidnapped. That's one example. They kidnapped brothers and sisters. They went into a music festival, a peace and music festival, killed 360 people and kidnapped at least 40 people from there. So they went, again, everything premeditated, pre-planned, and you yourself said Iran calls it, right, the reigns of Al-Aqsa, or what they call, and exactly, they had the backing, they had the training, they had the funding from Iran to do this. They would not have been able to do the attack, whether Iran knew of the specific day or what, they would not have been able to do this attack without the training, the support, the money, and the actual weapons and how to make weapons and the knowledge that they got from Iran. So I'm still with your point about what IDF is doing. So now we have a situation where we're under a terror attack. It took us a few days to neutralize, to find all these terrorists. It was a horrible, horrible war. Also, soldiers were killed and people who came to help were killed, of course. They even killed people who came to help, EMS, emergency services, ambulance people were all killed. So the first stage was to stop this, to make sure that Israel itself, in its own borders, there are no longer terrorists. And the second stage was to free these hostages, these 238 people who were kidnapped, who might still be brutalized as the two of us are speaking, because nobody knows what's happening with them. Hamas, a terrorist organization internationally recognized, doesn't even let the ICRC, the Red Cross, go in to see what is happening.
Is it also? I hear that Hamas does not have them in their custody either. It could be the Islamic Jihad. It could be there are all kinds of elements there who may be holding on to the hostages also.
They're all cooperating. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad is almost 100% funded by Iran. Again, the same country, the same regime, that is funding Hamas. So it's hard for me to believe that there's no connection between them. Secondly, we see Hamas come out very quickly with numbers after bombings, after this. They have their numbers. So it's hard. They know all these numbers, but they don't know where these hostages are that they themselves took. And also, if they wanted, they could find a way. To find these, or at least tell the truth, or at least let the ICRC go in and see what their situation is.
So what you're saying basically, Ms. Ben-Haim, is that you don't believe that the Hamas is telling the whole truth on where the hostages are, who holds the hostages and where they are. That's what you're basically saying.
I'm saying Hamas is a terrorist organization that rapes, brutalizes, kills, kidnaps babies, kidnaps women, kidnaps elderly people, kidnaps sick people. I'm saying, of course they're lying. That's the least of their atrocities that I would say. Of course they're lying. Anybody who takes anything Hamas says, and Hamas again controls Gaza. So anything coming out of Gaza, out of their Ministry of Health in Gaza, who controls the Ministry of Health in Gaza? Hamas. So lying is the least horrible thing that they're doing. So whatever they say, they have the capabilities. If they have the capabilities, and by the way, just a couple, like an hour, maybe a little more before your show, we got notice and Hamas was firing rockets out of the humanitarian area in South Gaza into Israeli towns. So they managed, despite what they're claiming about lack of fuel or what. They managed to get into the humanitarian area in South Gaza, set themselves up and shoot rockets into civilians in Israel from these refugees who everybody cares about, is Israel and the world, and not Hamas. They managed to set themselves up and shoot rockets. So an organization that is able to do this must be able to find, after 62 days, must be able to at least most of these 138, maybe not, they must be able to tell where they are, or have some information, or do the work to find this information. Because if we want this war stopped, one of the aims is to get these hostages back.
Absolutely.
So if we want the war stopped, and Israel proved that the last time, the 7 days, Israel gave everything they wanted, right? We said, okay, 3 terrorists for every hostage, fine, take 3 terrorists. We won't shoot. They wanted us not, they had a whole list of demands. Israel abided by every single one, because in Judaism, one, we care about our people, and you can see that we do, because look at what we're doing now. But there's also a very nice saying in Judaism: if you saved one life, you saved the entire world. So we will do, and again, they're not even taking advantage of that. If we want another ceasefire, would they want? So getting back to your question, the IDF, yes, the IDF is doing what it can. I'm not sure if even the first ceasefire, and there are many diplomatic efforts being done by Egypt, that's a regional power that has always played a very responsible, very leading role in the region, by the United States, which is, of course, our best, closest, and strongest ally, and other actors as well, trying to get to the ceasefire. So, but that, I don't know if it would have been possible without the pressure, the military pressure that the IDF put on Hamas in the north. And now we're continuing.
Let's hold that thought and turn to Mr. Abhijit Iyer Mitra. I wanted you to agree with me or disagree with either of us, that what Hamas did actually set off something which was beyond its control. I mean, what has Hamas achieved with this attack on the kibbutzim? I mean, Israel still holds the upper hand. The sympathy factor, is with Israel because of the women, children, and old people being taken hostage. And there's colossal collateral damage to Gaza. The thousands of Palestinian civilians have died in this. What was Hamas's objective at this? And I mean, they've inflicted a bleeding wound on themselves.
Neena, the problem with death cults like Hamas is they never think beyond the moment. We think somehow that they're extremely strategic in their thoughts. So, for example, what did Osama want to achieve with 9/11? What did ISI want to achieve with, say, 26/11 in Bombay? Nothing. They think of the means as the end, right? One great strike, and somehow Israel's morale will be shattered, and the whole world will come to liberate Palestine, and, kumbaya kind of thoughts. We need to remember the way terrorist organizations work. So, for example, you or me, if I want to say, just to use this as an example, if I want to come, say, kill Neena and take away those lovely earphones that you're wearing because, I don't know, I like those earphones. What happens
I like yours better.
I would talk to several people who would then say, Abhijit, have you considered the police is going to come stop you? Have you considered, for example, where you're going to run? Other people would say, look, I'll buy you those earphones. Please don't go do that. Now, the way governments function is there's a lot of intersectionality in decision making. The finance ministry will say, have you considered sanctions, etc., etc.? Have you considered the industries ministry will say, oh, we don't have enough fuel for all of this. The health ministry will say, yeah, but look what she's going to do to you, and you have the strength to be able to withstand her, etc., etc. The problem with terrorist organizations is, first of all, they're freaks. They're freak shows who operate in silos. So they don't have intersectional policy making that acts as a dampener to them. They live in the moment. Because of the secrecy required for an attack, they can't talk to others. This is number one. I think the bigger intention that we have to see here is Iran's intention. These guys were, I'm sorry to use the word, but they're intensely stupid people in a way who were really dancing to Iran's tune. Now, what would Iran want? See, for them, it's very much, as much as we like to believe the Shia-Sunni conflict is over, it is probably at its apogee right now. And what happens out here is the only real Sunni resistance organization is Hamas. It was always Hezbollah that was seen as the big partner and Hamas that was seen as the junior partner. And people would always ask, well, how could a Shia organization, Shia country support a Sunni organization? Well, no, because understand that when Hamas gets hit, the notions that Sunnis can stand up to Israel just goes completely. So they wanted Hamas to extract damage or inflict as much damage on Israel as possible, so that it would get hit so bad that all moral leadership in the Islamic world falls towards Iran, which then becomes a very powerful propaganda tool for them to exploit. We should also discount how much Erdogan and the Al Thanis in Qatar have been subsidizing this, facilitating this kind of behavior, essentially using Al Jazeera as a mouthpiece. You know, Al Jazeera's mission statement is very clear that it is a megaphone for the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's what they've been doing. They're all playing with fire. I think the real objective, we don't get it till we see what Iran's actions in this whole thing are.
That's very interesting. That's apart from maligning Al Jazeera, I do agree. I mean,
well, you can only malign somebody that has something to align. If you're born malignant, there's nothing to malign further.
I'd like to come back to you, Ms. Ben-Haim. Hamas's main aim was also said to be to scupper the Abraham Accords. Do you believe that was the other objective, that it, or was there more, as Abhijit says?
I definitely agree with the regional analysis, and the Iranian regime is definitely pulling much of the strings with many of our regional players. Not by accident, we're also being attacked by Hezbollah in the north and the Houthis, who are nowhere near us, and we'll talk about that, I know. But Hamas has one aim in life, and they say it in their charter, and they've been saying it throughout the 60 days. And Sinwar even said it, I think, exactly a week ago today. They want to kill Jews. They want to kill Israelis. They want to eliminate the state of Israel. They say it. It's not, it's not me saying, it's not some understanding of, it's in their charter, and this is their main goal, and this is what they're vying for. And the pictures and what they did on October 7th, I think they see it as their own victory in a way, because they were able to infiltrate Israel, and they were able to give us a very, very hard, horrible, horrific blow, and we're all seeing the consequences. But I think that perhaps the timing also had to do, like both of you said, with the other regional powers happening with the third year. In September, we celebrated 3 years of the Abraham Accord, and we see what strong ties we have with UAE, especially with Bahrain as well, and Morocco. And don't forget the G20, right?
Yeah.
And India's presidency, where Prime Minister Modi and the other leaders, Prime Minister Modi announced, and the other leaders congratulated and were working for, to have, and again, for different reasons, but to have a shipping route, to have a rail between India, Middle East, including UAE, including Israel, all the way to Europe via Greece, via Cyprus, wherever. And when I think these powers, these terrorists, these power of destruction, I like how you referred to them. They see the world coming together. They see moderate powers understanding that we need to collaborate, that we need to have ties, that we need to have alliances. It's obviously scary to them because it goes against everything they're trying to do. Terrorist organizations in their world, they want a world of terror. They want us to fall apart. They do not want us united, not only for their own ideological, crazy, horrific reasons, but this is also the way they make money. Both the Iranian regime, from drugs, from smuggling, many things, from the weapons, from the training. This is how. So there's a lot of factors into it. But so yes, I think the Abraham Accords coming in tune with India's announcement of the G20, with all of these regional issues coming along, also with I2U2, the United States, Israel, United Arab Emirates, and India, that alliance. There are many, our talks, the talks or becoming a little bit closer with Saudi Arabia, that's door opening. I think all these
But it's
very
also,
positive things.
but isn't it
to
also,
us.
isn't it also because the Palestinians feel that they are just being abandoned? That, you know, to a certain extent, I mean, the Houthis, there's no way you can actually, you know, even make any room for what the Houthis are doing. They're trying to block the Red Sea. They're attacking ship after ship. The last week they attacked 3 ships, and if they block international commerce, shipping routes, maritime security, the US is, you know, is going to be forced to set up a major, you know, naval task force. So they'll be back in the region in a very big way. So in a way, then Hamas has brought the US back into the game when the US was actually stepping back to a certain extent from the region. But also, I also feel that, you know, to a certain extent, it's also because, you know, the attack has brought, what Hamas may have also wanted is to bring attention back to the fact that the two-state formula for where Palestinians and Israelis can live together, is that not possible anymore? Has that been shot to pieces, blown to pieces, or is there any room now for that to come back?
I don't think this was anywhere near Hamas's targets, goals, or ambitions in this thing.
Yeah.
Hamas and you know, and again, it goes back. We can't confuse the Palestinian Authority ruled by President Mahmoud Abbas and the Fatah, okay, that are totally separate issue.
The moderate Palestinians.
Yeah. From and the not just, it's not just moderate. It's they have their, you know, it's their own rule. It's been an ongoing negotiations. What is going to happen with the two-state solution? But Mahmoud Abbas, Arafat before him, they recognized Israel, right? They said, we are the Palestinians. We deserve a right to self-identification. We want our own country. We want our own, you know, whatever this will. But we understand that Israel is a legal, living, breathing entity, and that Israel exists and will continue to exist. Now, we can argue about borders. We can argue where the capital will be. We can argue about many, many things. And obviously, we're still, you know, we're still in this phase. But this has nothing to do. And again, you know, and we do still have some control, especially in different areas of the Palestinian Authority, period. What's happening in Gaza has nothing to do with any of that. One, how did Hamas gain control of Gaza?
Thank you.
It killed the Fatah politicians. It threw them off roofs. They shot their families up, either in the knees or killed them. They took over by force. They took Gaza, and they're a terrorist organization. There's, you know, not recognized in India yet, and hopefully soon, but the EU, the US, Australia, obviously Israel, many countries, over 40 countries recognize, and if they haven't recognized, they must recognize after what we see is happening. Hamas is a terrorist organization. So they do their things for, you know, what did you call them? A death cult with their death thoughts and their sole reason of killing us, of destroying us. There's no, and as we said, the coalitions that we're building maybe prompted them because this is what they hate. This is what they don't want. But there's no thing here about independence. They were independent. Gaza Strip is a, you know, beautiful piece of land by the Mediterranean Sea. When Israel left in 2005, it left greenhouses, it left irrigation systems, it left things that could have been used. But Hamas for 16 years has been proven again and again. I'm not talking about the money they're getting from Qatar or Iran. When they had the opportunity, when organizations, countries, individual people came and donated money for schools, for food, for education, for employment, what did Hamas do? They didn't use it for any of it. They took it to build tunnels over 500 kilometers. They even took the pipes from water pipes, you know, those good plastic things, and used them in their tunnels. Hamas at every opportunity has shown it has no interest not only in Israel in a two-state solution, it has no interest in its own people. It's so.
If I can come to you, Abhijit, tell me, do you agree with Ms. Ben-Haim? Because I mean, the Hamas leaders are still very much around, right? Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Deif, Ismail Hania, Khalid Mashal, and they are given refuge in Doha and in Lebanon.
Absolutely.
So, and where they seem.
You know, I bet you Israel cares 100 times more about the people in Gaza than Ismail Hania or Khalid Mashal do. Let's not forget Khalid Mashal himself is accused of pilfering 2.75 billion, not million, billion, billion dollars from international aid, which is why he had to give up all his positions and run off to Doha. Ismail Hania similarly has a huge personal fortune. There is an element of personal aggrandizement out here. His son was carted out via the Rafah border to Egypt 1 month before this attack started.
Really?
All right, to Doha. So what ends up happening is these people sit outside. This is such a classic pattern we see. Shahadat and martyrdom and all this heroic dying, this snuff porn, aggrandization of snuff porn that we see is all meant for the ordinary people of Gaza. The Hamas does not care about those ordinary people because they're all sitting in Doha. Ismail Hania's son apparently drives a Rolls-Royce convertible sitting in Doha. Wow. Right? So, there's a huge difference there between Gaza and what's happening in Doha. And one of the reasons the leadership will survive is precisely because they don't want to share in all the difficulties that the people are going through, number one. Number two, I think we also need to understand the difference in motivation. Every Palestinian dead is negative PR for the Israelis, which is why the Israelis don't want to see dead Palestinians. But every Gazan dead is the PR gain for Hamas, which is why Hamas gains in more Palestinians being killed, which is why they use human shields. They do not allow those human shields to leave. When those human shields leave, they shoot their own people to prevent them from leaving. Israelis have a very clear, when they're bombing a building, we've seen this. We've been taken there and shown a lot of these things. A very small noise bomb is put off over a building. And everybody in Gaza knows when that small noise bomb comes that you have 7 to 10 minutes to evacuate a building. And invariably what Hamas does is they will storm that building with folks with guns and things like that and prevent them from leaving if it's an important enough building, in the hope the Israelis will not attack that building. And very frequently the Israelis don't, because they calculate how many people are going to die, etc., etc. And sometimes, the cost of the target, the opportunity cost of the target is so high that they've got to bomb it. And this is where, you contrast two separate articles of the Geneva Convention 4. One, which prevents human shield taking, and the other is the responsibility to minimize collateral. But mind you, there is no Geneva Convention that says you cannot have collateral. The responsibility is minimize collateral, and Israel follows its obligations under international law to absolutely minimize that as much as possible. Let's also talk about these absurd figures, 16,000 dead. We have carefully, I'm a member of, I hope Tammy is not going to ask the Mossad to start investigating me for this, but I have Al-Qassam brigades on my Telegram. I follow them on Telegram. And what happens is, you look at all the atrocity videos being put out and, by celebrity Palestinian atrocity journalists. You add up all the corpses, all the verifiable corpses and things. You're not looking at more than about 600 to 700 people dead after something like almost 17,000 Israeli strikes. That is an incredibly low number. It is an incredibly precise number. We now know even human rights.
And these numbers are put out. And these numbers are put out by.
It's put out by the Hamas Health Ministry, so-called Health Ministry, who know literally within 2 minutes of a bombing that 400 people have. How do you know 400 people died within 2 minutes of a bombing? With Al Ahli Hospital. Even if you count, they gathered all the corpses, and we don't know if they were corpses. They gathered them all around for a press conference, like a mound of skulls, kind of almost medieval style mound of skulls.
So you're basically saying that the media management of Hamas is basically to show the number of dead, to generate sympathy.
It is to exaggerate and to create atrocity literature. They're very good at blood libel. The old blood libel that was applied to Jews, every Christian martyr child is because the Jew took him and sacrificed him on the Sabbath. They've perfected it. They are what you're seeing today, what you see on the media is effectively assisting modern day 21st century blood libel.
And the fact is that you're saying that there are no 13,000 dead or 16,000 dead, that the numbers are greatly exaggerated. But those buildings which have been flattened, must have caused some kind of, I mean, the bodies being shown
Absolutely.
on television as being rushed into hospital and so on and so forth. There must be some degree of, some truth to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we have the Israelis go out of the way to reduce it. The Hamas goes out of its way to increase the civilian casualties. Therein lies the point. I have no doubt that the truth lies somewhere in between. But the problem is, you look at a Hamas video, you can just see how stage managed it is. We have people from Gaza tweeting out to show how Hamas has been dropping leaflets and sending them SMSs saying, don't take Israeli SMSs seriously. They're not going to bomb this building. Please stay in your houses. Don't go away. We know for a fact that that massacre of people sitting on that trailer truck who were leaving northern Gaza after Israel said, please evacuate, was done by the Palestinians themselves. We know Al-Ahli hospital, the so-called massacre, was done now by a Hamas rocket that was full of fuel, and the secondary explosion ignited that fuel almost like a fuel air bomb and spread it amongst the people who were sheltering in the garden outside Al-Ahli hospital. We can see all of this. The problem is there is so much misinformation and disinformation, and even reputed organizations, they will tilt because the problem is it's very fashionable to oppose Israel. Understanding the Israeli point requires a bit of a PhD degree. Stupid people can't understand the Israeli point because it's a very legal, technical point. Whereas you go scream, "Oh, let's go kill the Jews! Yay, let's go kill the Jews!" It's very easy. It's infectious. So these things require a very calm, collected, clinical approach to viewing all these videos coming out of Gaza. And while you're doing that, you end up seeing how much the burden of wrong is overwhelmingly on Hamas and how much Israel is actually trying to preserve lives, both the lives of hostages.
On that point, can I go back to Ms. Ben-Haim and ask you, you even have, senior Israeli leaders like Ehud Olmert and others who are saying that both sides must find a way to live in peace. Is that just talk, or can it really happen? I mean, is there a possibility that there could be some way that that there could be a peace plan that could be put in place? Because even in East Jerusalem, you have an issue. You have an issue even in the West Bank. So how are you going to resolve that?
Yeah, again, I must separate. There must be a solution, and I think most people on both sides wish for a solution and a peaceful solution between the Palestinian Authority and Israel. But this has nothing to do with the current war or with the terrorist organization.
No, if we set Hamas and the terrorist attack aside, I'm saying moving forward, with the fact that the Arab League and other Arab leaders were in China and Beijing, and then they came together and have had meetings, both Cairo and and the King of Jordan and so on and so forth. So basically, looking at some way that there is a solution to this, so that that Hamas, once it's obliterated from the south of Gaza as well, what happens to Gaza? And what happens to the Palestinians who are there? What happens to the hostages who are still being held? And from then on, what can we expect for a peaceful Israel, to going forward?
Yeah, I think nobody is talking that far. I'm sure there are discussions being done in maybe back rooms and back channels carefully. But Israel has been very clear. We left Gaza 18 years ago. We have no reason, we do not want to go back into Gaza. Okay, we're in Gaza now for a few very specific aims. You've both mentioned them a few times, but very quickly to return the hostages, to eliminate Hamas's ability to attack us, and to govern Gaza, and to bring peace and security back to the borders of Israel, for within Israel and to its people.
Governing Gaza, Ms. Ben-Haim, involves an involvement in Gaza.
Nobody's saying nobody. I don't know who's going to govern Gaza the day after the war, but it's not going to be Hamas. Hamas had 16 years, and I won't repeat what I've said. It's proven again and again and again that it has, no responsibility towards the people who live there. no aim, nothing in its mind except for to destroy Israel. So it's obvious that Hamas cannot stay there. What will be done the day after, we'll see. At the moment, we're trying to figure out how to free the hostages, but there will be some sort of solution. Maybe it will involve some of the regional players. Maybe it will involve regional international organizations. There are many, scenarios, many possibilities for what will be the day after. But we first have to get through what we're doing at the moment. It's been 62 days where, the pain, the bleeding in Israel, the attack is basically still going on, as I said, because of the hostages and because of the rockets. And if I just may add something, personally, as a human being, it's sad and awful when any child dies. Okay, and war is a difficult thing, and war is a horrible thing. Being displaced from your home, whether all the Israelis who had their homes ruined, and some have been displaced already from the north due to the Hezbollah's shooting. So, for Israelis, displaced Palestinians, both, people on both sides had their homes ruined. But we must remember a couple of things. One, the responsible party for all of this is Hamas. If October 7th hadn't happened, if this ongoing attack, shooting rockets from within the humanitarian zone isn't happening, Israel would not be trying to free its hostages and get rid of Hamas in Gaza. So let's be very clear who's responsible for all this pain that everybody's going on at the moment. And just one quick word about the numbers. Anybody under 18 is considered a child, is considered a minor. But we have to keep in mind that somebody who's 17 and 10-month-old, for whatever reasons, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, he can be a rapist, he can be a terrorist, he can brutalize. So just because he's counted as a minor doesn't mean he is not a devil, doesn't mean he's not a terrorist. So we have to be, and I won't go because Abhijit said it much better than me. We won't go into the numbers and the counting. He went into that, but you must also remember the children. And we've seen it horribly in other terrorist organizations around the world as well. Boko Haram uses 13-year-old boys. So when they die, we cry because they're minors. No, they're still terrorists.
So tell me something. Now, there is these recurring reports that keep coming in of this big intelligence failure. It's very intriguing because, one of the reports says this document retrieved from the Hamas militants who died, from the phones they had, from their computers, from their tablets, GPS devices, from their GoPro cameras. It shows that the kibbutzim attack plan has been years in the making. How is it that Israel missed the wood for the trees? How is it that, nobody figured out that these guys, there have been Hamas attacks over the last 16 years over and over, but this one is by far the most brutal and the most gross, absolutely unbelievable. Hamas even had drawings, I believe, of the interior of houses and what the way out was. And apparently they were taught Hebrew expressions, quite brutal Hebrew expressions, saying shut up and don't move and things like that.
And take your clothes off and take your underwear off. This is what they were taught.
So, how is it that Israel didn't, is it because nobody thought Hamas would execute such a big terror attack, or did they just focus on the West Bank and forgot about Gaza?
Well, my answer is probably not going to satisfy you. Part of it is going to be, like I said about the other one, Gaza the day after. The day after, I'm sure people will figure out, if people won't take responsibility, investigations will start internal in Israel on different levels with different groups. I'm sure, we're going to be talking about this for years to come. But I think what you said, might be partly right. Even if we had the pictures and, you said the wood for the trees, even if we had some of the information, I don't, but I think a normal person with a normal mind that's sort of dealing with things, how would you put each of these little, if you had how you would put it together to figure out that they're going to come in such force with so much ammunition, with gasoline tanks, with their wires ready to tie up entire families and burn them alive? If I would have come and, Abhijit said it in the beginning for a different reason, but if I would have come and told you that I'm going to do this today, you wouldn't have believed me. Because you're a normal person. We're all three, all of us and the technicians working on your show. We can't imagine what they did. What we learned a few days ago when the children were being released, they took the children hostages, a couple of brothers, and they branded them. They took the exhaust pipe of their motorcycles that they were driving on and stuck up their body parts on so they'll be burned. So this way, if they do try to run away, not that I know how you can run away from a tunnel, but if they do, they would be easily identified. They won't be able to hide in the crowd. But I read it and I read it again. I was like, it can't be true. But then again, who would make this up?
But shouldn't there, when I went to a kibbutz on the border with Gaza, I was in the playground with some mothers and children, and these rockets started firing, and the sirens started wailing, and the mothers gathered all these children together and ran into a bomb shelter. I don't know, is that the way to live? Shouldn't there become some kind of a buffer zone between Gaza and the land that the Palestinians live in and the land that the Israelis live in? I mean, wouldn't that be far more sensible? I mean, in a perfect world, I don't know.
Yeah, in a perfect world, we'd have huge mountain ranges, the highest in the world, separating us from our enemies, like they do in other countries. But no, look, they have rockets. If you're I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word death cult again. I think, if you're in such a cult, if you're in such a terrorist organization that's being pumped and funded and ideologized by a regime such as the Iranian regime, and we see their rockets hit everywhere in Israel. Now from South Gaza, they're shooting into central Israel. So there is nowhere really to hide. But I think it also goes to show something else. One, as I said, normal people can't even imagine these things. And secondly, I think, we believe in peace so much, right? We've had in 79, the peace with Egypt, in 94, the peace with Jordan, the Abraham Accords, that we're, and you're right, it's not a normal way to live, but we're sort of saying, what? We understand that they're terrorists. We understand, and Israel foils a few terror attacks daily. We just don't hear about them because they're foiled. Whether it's a terrorist coming in their car and trying to run people over, or one with one knife or one gun or one rifle, or a few of them, we foil them daily. And we understand the reality we live in. And we say, okay, we're able to foil. Most of them we foil. We suffer some losses. But it must be that most people want peace like us. It must be that somewhere we understand that if we make the world, better, if the economy grows more, if people, have a future, if their kids get an education, they'll want to also just be in peace and quiet, and I think it was and we've proven, okay, these theories are wrong. Apparently terrorists are terrorists, and their sole and single-minded aim is to destroy us. And now we need to understand that, and this is what we're fighting for. This is why we're at war.
So, Abhijit, if I can bring you in, do you see any meeting ground at all between what the Netanyahu government wants to achieve, which is, both the release of hostages and the obliteration of Hamas, and some kind of a peace deal that is done behind the scenes? Do you see any hope at all of the new year bringing some peace? Maybe a Christmas truce even?
Unfortunately not, Neena, because, this is a phenomenon we've seen. The foreign minister of Israel some 40, 50 years back, Abba Aban, used to say, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Till 1967, they wanted the 1947 borders. After 1967, they want the 1967 borders. But then they conveniently create a group that even refuses to recognize the 1967 borders, because what they want, understand, even the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, that is to say, wants the right of return to Israel, which is such an anathema to the whole, a nation today is its people. It's not the land, it's the people. The people are your biggest asset. And you literally
I think it's both the land and the people.
Well, the land is the property of the people. But that is a property right issue. The people make the nation. They literally want half their population to be settled down in Israel, a country that they accuse of apartheid. I have never met a more, logically brain-dead and convoluted argument than that. So
you're
first they
basically
want
saying that it's an unrealistic goal.
It's very, very unrealistic. The second thing that they want is, East Jerusalem, which is again a very unrealistic goal. Because what happens
East Jerusalem
is, look,
has a very high Palestinian population.
It does, and that really shouldn't matter, because the problem there is you don't want a divided city. Understand, did partition solve the problems of cross-border firing? You go to Kashmir today, there is cross-border firing. You can't have a city where what is happening, Hamas is able to fire rockets from 120 kilometers away into Israel. You think it's going to stop when the city is divided with a fence through it? It's not. Especially not Jerusalem. So, there is a certain minimum security requirement. Remember, the Fatah was offered 97, all of the Gaza Strip and 97% of the West Bank, sequentially, periodically over time in the Camp David Accords. They went on saying no because they want, again, to swamp Israel. And the notion of, a population exchange and partition is accepted. It is a canon in international law.
Do you think October 7th will change this, will change the way Fatah looks at things?
No, I don't think so, because Fatah, they are an old, corrupt organization. They're only there to really make money. They still have not held elections out there. They've lost popularity very significantly. So, it's very easy, to externalize blame. You never want to accept it. So, the Jews. The Jew has historically been responsible for everybody's shortcomings, you see, in Europe. So again, it won't, if Mahmoud Abbas doesn't want to settle this, he will blame Tammy Ben-Haim for it. That's the way it rolls. And I'm sure Tammy's also ready for it to get blamed for it.
Any concluding remarks? We're running out of time. Abhijit, do you have something to say about where it should go, what we should expect to see in the coming weeks?
I think what we really need to get clear is the monumental effort that it's going to require to de-radicalize Gaza. It is not going to be nice. It is not going to be convenient. It is not going to be some, Walt Disney movie come to life. But there is a desperate need for de-radicalization. There is a desperate need for improvement in living standards so that the current birth rates of 5.56, sometimes at one point it even went up to 9, whereas the replacement rate is 2.1, all bred. 44% of that population is under 13 years of age. All bred for jihad. How do you de-radicalize a society like that? How do you make a government in the West Bank, a formerly democratically elected government in the West Bank, responsible for the people's own desires instead of externalizing everything? These are not easy things to sort out. Even a clear separation and a two-state solution isn't going to sort out those fundamental problems because they run so deep. I think with the benefit of hindsight, we can always say that land for peace was a big mistake because, land is a tangible, peace is an intangible. You can't sign over half your property to me for an expression of love. And this is why, the divorces ended up becoming so nasty. Unfortunately, here, this is exactly what they seek.
Thank you. Ms. Ben-Haim, the pain of the Palestinians, who are caught in between is also huge. I mean, is that also not a factor that will be worked into any future kind of, I suppose when the Palestinians and Israelis, if and when they sit across a table and talk?
As we said before, it's definitely painful. Having your home, having to leave your home, being in a camp, being, not knowing where you are. It's the same right now on both sides of the border. But the one thing we can be clear of, and I think we're also hearing it more and more from the Palestinians, the Palestinian refugees in Gaza, that there is a chance, and Abhijit is right, it's going to be a long while, but the only chance there is if the Hamas is no longer there and Hamas is no longer governing, and if the international organizations that are there now, if the countries who are, doing conferences and are interested in the welfare and well-being of the citizens of Gaza, if they all work together the day after as well, unite their powers and work together and work intelligently now with a much, much closer look or closer, control, and with understanding that you can't have a Hamas-led education ministry because they teach their kids jihad and hate, and we actually need to do it correctly, then there's a chance. But for any to happen, even if it's a long and hard road, the first and foremost is Israel will return its hostages back, and we will make sure that Hamas can no longer attack us and will no longer govern Gaza.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ben-Haim. Thank you, Mr. Mitra. Thank you, viewers. Please click on the Global Express icon and share it on Facebook and X. Thanks so much.